An infertile alien princess was forced to marry a human, but what her mother saw changed their world. The twin suns of planet Velthera burned low on the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the marble courtyard of the House of Seralia. Inside, silence filled the air like a heavy storm about to break. Lyrian stood alone before the High Council. Her silver skin dimmed, her bright violet eyes lowered in shame. The elder's voice echoed through the chamber. Lyrian of House Seralia, daughter of the matron, you have been tested 3 times. And every time, the life seed fails within you. You are infertile. Gasps rippled through the gathered nobles. Among her people, infertility was not just a curse, it was a disgrace. A sign that the goddess had turned her face away. Lyrian's hands trembled, but she kept her chin high, refusing to cry in front of them. Her mother, Matron Seralia, sat at the head of the council table, her face calm but her eyes cold. She was one of the most powerful women on Velthera. Her words could shape the fate of entire colonies. Yet, in that moment, her gaze toward her daughter was filled not with love, but with disappointment. This shame will not destroy our house, Seralia said, her voice like a blade. You will be married to the human ambassador, Ethan Cole. At dawn, the council murmured in shock, a human? To bind a Veltheran bloodline with an off-worlder? Such a thing had never been done. Lyrian's breath caught. Mother, please. Don't make me do this, she whispered. But Seralia's answer was final. This is not about you, Lyrian. This is about survival. Our people are dying out, and the humans are strong, resilient, fertile. Perhaps their blood can restore what we lost that night. The halls of the house felt colder than ever. Lyrian sat by her window, staring at the twin moons rising over the crystalline forests. She thought about the human she was forced to marry. A stranger from a distant blue world, Ethan Cole, the Terran diplomat, had arrived weeks ago to discuss trade and alliance. He was calm, polite, and curious about their culture, but to Lyrian, he was just another symbol of her mother's power games. Her heart felt trapped between duty and despair. When the palace doors opened the next morning, Ethan stood there in ceremonial armor, his brown hair shining in the alien light, his eyes filled with quiet kindness. He didn't look arrogant like most humans she had seen before. He bowed slightly and said, Lyrian, I know you didn't choose this. I didn't either. But maybe we can make peace with it, somehow. His words caught her off guard. There was no mockery in his tone, only sincerity. Lyrian's sharp response softened for a moment, but she quickly turned away, hiding her confusion. The wedding took place under the great crystal dome, where energy currents flowed like rivers of light. Priests chanted ancient verses, their hands raised toward the glowing temple spires. As tradition demanded, Ethan extended his hand toward her, and she reluctantly placed hers on his. The moment their skin touched, a sudden pulse of light flashed between them, bright and blue like a heartbeat of the universe. The priests stopped chanting, the lights above flickered, and one of the elder clerics gasped aloud. That is impossible, he whispered. Staring at Lyrian's glowing hand, her skin shimmered as if alive, light spreading through her veins in gentle waves. Lyrian pulled her hand back, trembling. What was that? She whispered, but no one had an answer. After the ceremony, Seralia watched her daughter and the human leave for the Earth Embassy ship, her face unreadable. Inside her mind, she wondered if the old legends were true, the prophecy of the bound spark, a union between 2 races that would awaken forgotten power. Lyrian didn't look back at her mother. She didn't care for prophecies or politics. She only felt the weight of her new bond pressing against her chest. Ethan tried to speak, but she kept her eyes fixed on the stars outside the shuttle window. Her voice low, You don't know what you've just stepped into. Human, Ethan smiled gently. Maybe not. But I'd like to learn. For a moment, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Fear, curiosity, maybe even the beginning of trust. When the shuttle entered orbit, Lyrian looked down at her planet, the only home she had ever known. A strange ache filled her chest, part sorrow, part relief. She didn't realize that the faint glow beneath her skin was still there, pulsing in time with her heart. Far below, in the council hall, Seralia stood before the priests, demanding answers. "What did you see during the ceremony?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The oldest priest bowed his head, his voice barely a whisper. "Lady Seralia, the energy we witnessed was ancient, something that hasn't appeared since the first creation. If the human and your daughter truly share that bond, it could change everything." Seralia's expression hardened. "Then we will control it," she said. But deep down, for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't known since her youth: fear. As the ship disappeared into the stars, Ethan looked at Lyrian and said softly, "Maybe fate put us together for a reason." Lyrian turned away, hiding the faint shimmer of light on her cheeks. "Fate is cruel, human," she said, but somewhere inside her, something began to awaken, a spark that neither of them could yet understand. And if you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to subscribe to HFY Sci-Fi, because what's coming next will change everything. The stars stretched like silver rivers outside the window of the Earth Embassy ship. Drifting silently through Veltheron orbit, Lyrian sat alone in her private chamber, her reflection shimmering faintly in the curved glass, her eyes distant and cold. The faint glow from the marriage ceremony still lingered under her skin, a ghostly pulse that she couldn't explain. She tried to ignore it, telling herself it was just a side effect of the ritual. But deep inside, fear whispered otherwise. Her entire life had been shaped by her people's obsession with purity and fertility. And now she was bound to a human, a species her kind considered primitive. She wrapped her arms around herself and whispered, "I will not be their experiment in another room." Ethan Cole studied the alien data tablets left on the desk. He was not a soldier or a scientist, but he had been trained to adapt, to observe, to survive among new worlds still. Nothing in his diplomatic manuals had prepared him for an arranged marriage to an alien woman who hated him. He replayed the ceremony in his mind, the flash of light, the look of shock on the priest's face, and the way Lyrian had trembled in silence. Whatever happened between them wasn't normal, and somehow, he felt that strange pulse inside himself too, faint but real. When he closed his eyes, he could almost feel her heartbeat echoing through his own chest. That night, Lyrian stepped quietly into the ship's small research bay. She had always been a scientist before her disgrace, once studying the genetic decline of her people. Now she used her skills for one purpose: to understand why her body reacted to the human's touch. She drew a small blood sample and compared it with a scan of Ethan's DNA taken from the ship's records. The results made no sense. Her cellular structure, once dormant and sterile, showed faint patterns of regeneration. Her cells were dividing slowly, but unmistakably alive. Lyrian's breath caught, her heart pounding. "No, this is impossible," she whispered, before she could analyze further. The ship trembled as a burst of static filled the lights. Energy fields flickered, and for a moment, she saw the faint blue glow of her skin reflected in the dark metal walls. The door slid open suddenly, and Ethan appeared, his eyes wide. "Are you all right?" "The system's just overloaded." Lyrian quickly hid the scanner behind her. "It's nothing. A minor power fluctuation," she said too fast. Ethan glanced around, noticing the faint glow on her hands. "You're glowing again," he said softly. She stepped back. "Don't touch me," she warned, her voice shaking. "I wasn't going to," Ethan replied calmly. I want to help." His voice was steady, honest, and for a moment, she didn't sense the arrogance she expected from a human. But before either could say more, the ship's AI announced, "Warning. Unidentified energy surge detected in engineering deck." Ethan ran out of the room without hesitation. For reasons she couldn't explain, Lyrian followed. They reached the engine bay, where blue arcs of plasma leaped from the core like lightning. A malfunction had overloaded the containment field, and the air crackled with unstable power. Ethan grabbed a plasma regulator from the wall and began shutting down circuits manually. "Get back!" he shouted as the containment shield flickered. Lyrian tried to help, rerouting power through the auxiliary lines with quick, expert motions, but one of the energy conduits exploded. Sending a shockwave across the deck, Ethan lunged toward her without thinking, pulling her to the floor as sparks rained around them when his arm wrapped around her. The same blue light from the ceremony burst between them again. Only this time, it spread across the entire engine bay, calming the wild plasma and stabilizing the core instantly. Both of them lay still for a moment, the silence broken only by their heavy breathing. Ethan's uniform was scorched, his face streaked with sweat and soot. Lyrian looked at him, stunned. "You?" "Stopped it," she whispered. Ethan shook his head. "No, we stopped it." He looked at her glowing skin and smiled faintly. "You're something else, you know that?" She turned away quickly, trying to hide the confusion on her face. "Don't speak like that," she said softly. But when he helped her stand, his hand brushed hers again, and the light pulsed once more, gentle and rhythmic like two hearts beating together. Later that night, Lyrian sat by herself again. But this time, she couldn't focus. Her mind replayed the moment in the engine bay, the warmth of his hand, the strange comfort she felt when he held her. It frightened her more than any council decree. She opened her secret digital journal and recorded her thoughts. "His presence changes me," she typed. "My cells respond to him. My body is no longer sterile. If my mother finds out, she will never let me live free." She paused, her fingers trembling above the console. "I do not know if this is science or destiny." Meanwhile, in the communication chamber deep within the ship, a shadowed hologram flickered to life. It was Seralia, Lyrian's mother, connected through a secure Veltharan channel. Her voice was cold and precise. "Monitor the human's vitals. I want every interaction between him and my daughter recorded," she ordered her aides. An aide hesitated. "Matron, if what the priest said is true, if their bond really awakened the old energy," Seralia's expression darkened. "Then we must control it before the humans realize its power." Her gaze turned distant, filled with silent fear. "If my daughter becomes the key to what was lost, no one, not even the council, will take her from me." As the ship drifted quietly through the stars, Ethan stood by the observation deck, watching the endless void. He felt the faint thrum under his skin again, the same rhythm he felt in Lyrian's presence. He placed his hand on the glass and whispered, "Whatever's happening to us, it's not an accident." Far behind him, unseen, Lyrian stood in the doorway, her glowing eyes watching him in silence. She didn't know whether to fear him or trust him, but one thing was certain: her life was no longer her own. And beyond the stars, forces were already moving, waiting for the moment when the human and the outcast would unknowingly ignite a war between two worlds. When Lyrian opened her eyes, she wasn't sure if she was dreaming or still trapped between waking and light. The hum of the ship echoed softly in her ears, a low rhythmic pulse that somehow matched the beating of her heart. She was lying in the medbay, surrounded by softly glowing diagnostic screens, each showing data patterns that made no sense to her trained scientific mind. The nurse android hovered silently beside her bed, its metallic voice gentle. "Vitals stable?" Regenerative activity detected in cellular structure. Anomaly classified as unknown. Lyrian blinked, staring at the data lines that formed on the display. Her cells, once declared lifeless, were now dividing, multiplying, full of energy. It was impossible. Her body had been declared sterile since birth, her reproductive energy dormant, sealed by fate itself, and yet now it was alive. Before she could gather her thoughts, the door slid open, and Ethan stepped inside. Still in his charred uniform from the explosion, he looked exhausted. His arm bandaged where plasma burns had licked his skin, but his eyes still held that same calm light. "You shouldn't be here," Lyrian said weakly, her voice trembling. "The med bay is restricted," Ethan smiled softly. "You almost got yourself killed in that engine room. You don't get to send me away that easily." She turned her face away, but her cheeks glowed faintly. Betraying her emotion, he sat beside her, resting his hands on his knees. "What happened down there?" "When we touched the energy, it wasn't just electricity. It felt alive." Lyrian didn't answer. She stared at the holographic data floating beside her bed. Her thoughts spun wildly. Should she tell him the truth? Should she admit that his touch had awakened something deep inside her? Her people would exile her again if they knew, but hiding the truth felt impossible. "I don't know," she finally whispered. "Something inside me changed." "Your presence, it affects me." Ethan frowned. "Affects you how?" She hesitated. "When I'm near you, my body reacts. It's like I'm connected to something that was sleeping inside me." Her words sent a chill down his spine. Yet he felt strangely drawn closer. "Then maybe this connection isn't just about you," he said quietly. "Maybe it's both of us." For a moment, the silence between them was thick, almost magnetic. Then the ship's intercom broke the quiet. "Attention, crew. Long-range scans detecting unidentified vessels approaching from Veltheron orbit." Lyrian's eyes widened. "My mother," she whispered. "She must have found us in the command deck." Alarms flared red as sensors locked onto the incoming ships. Ethan hurried to the control room, Lyrian close behind him, her pulse racing. Through the viewing screen, they saw 3 Veltheran cruisers cutting through space like blades of glass. The lead ship transmitted a direct message. High Matron Soralia's voice filled the bridge. Cold and commanding. "Ethan Cole, return my daughter to Velthera immediately. She is carrying something that does not belong to her." Lyrian froze, her blood turning to ice. "What does she mean?" Ethan asked sharply. "She knows," Lyrian whispered, her voice shaking. "She's been monitoring us." Before they could respond, the ship shuddered as a containment field wrapped around them. Locking their engines, the crew scrambled to stabilize power. But Lyrian's focus was elsewhere. Her hand was glowing again, brighter this time, almost painful. The light spread across her chest like fire beneath her skin. "Ethan," she gasped, clutching her arm. "It's happening again." He reached for her instinctively, and the instant his hand touched hers, the glow burst outward in a blinding sphere of blue energy. The containment field shattered like glass, sending the Veltheran ships spinning backward into the void. Every light aboard the embassy ship flickered, and then silence fell. When the systems rebooted, the ship drifted freely once more, engines offline. Ethan stared at her, speechless. "You just destroyed a fleet with your bare hands." Lyrian shook her head in disbelief. "No, I didn't. It wasn't me. It was U.S." Her skin dimmed again, the glow fading as exhaustion hit her like a storm. She collapsed, and Ethan caught her just before she hit the floor, holding her close. In that moment, something inside him pulsed too, a strange warmth that wasn't human. He looked down at his hands and saw faint streaks of the same blue light running through his veins. "What the hell is happening to me?" he whispered later when Lyrian awoke again. Ethan was gone, and the room was dark. Only a single holographic note flickered beside her bed. "Don't worry. I'll keep you safe." Outside, in the corridor, Ethan stood before the ship's AI interface. Demanding answers, the AI's neutral voice responded. Biosynchronization detected between human subject Ethan Cole and Veltheron subject Lyrian Seralia. Energy signature matches ancient mythological event known as the Bound Spark. "The Bound Spark?" Ethan repeated. "Legend indicates the merging of two life forces, capable of rewriting biological laws." The AI continued. He stared at the glowing data in disbelief. "So we're connected? Permanently?" "Correction," the AI said calmly. "You are evolving." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Seralia stood on her flagship, her reflection in the viewing glass cold and determined. Her advisor spoke nervously. "Matron, their bond has triggered the old prophecy. The hybrid connection could restore fertility to all Veltherans." Seralia's eyes hardened. "Then my daughter will serve her people, whether she wishes to or not." She turned toward the stars, whispering, "No human will take from me what my bloodline lost." Back on the drifting embassy ship, Lyrian sat up slowly, the pain in her chest subsiding. Through the observation window, she could see Ethan standing outside on the docking platform. Staring into the void, he looked smaller against the stars, but strong, resolute, and as she watched him, she felt that same pulse again, steady and sure, beating like a second heart inside her. For the first time, she didn't feel cursed. She felt alive. Yet neither of them knew that their bond had already begun changing more than just their bodies. Across the network of Veltheran ships, strange signals pulsed, echoes of the same blue energy spreading silently through space. Something ancient had awoken, and soon every living being would feel its call. Asterisk. For 3 days, the embassy ship drifted through silent space, surrounded by the faint hum of damaged engines and flickering lights. The crew avoided the lower decks where the explosion had torn through the metal bulkheads, whispering about the blue fire bond that had saved them. Only 2 people knew the truth, or part of it, Lyrian and Ethan. He spent his days repairing the power core, and she spent hers in the medbay, trying to understand what she had become. Each scan told the same impossible story. Her sterile organs now glowed with active energy, cellular growth increasing every hour. It was as if the dead soil of her body had been reborn. Blooming with life, she ran the analysis again, heart pounding, and when the data appeared, her breath caught. The readings showed 2 heartbeats inside her body, one her own, and one smaller, lighter, pulsing in rhythm with the first. Her hand trembled as she whispered, "No, it can't be," the med unit confirmed in its calm mechanical tone. Secondary heartbeat detected. Gestation status positive. Early hybrid formation confirmed. Lyrian sank to her knees, the console light washing over her silver skin. 1,000 memories flooded her mind, her mother's cruel words, the council's judgment, the whispers calling her barren and broken. Now those same voices echoed differently, replaced by a single thought, life, but fear followed quickly. Because she knew what her people would do if they found out. Veltherans feared impurity more than death itself, and a child born of human blood would be seen not as a miracle, but as an abomination. Ethan found her sitting on the floor, her face pale, eyes wide with disbelief. "Lyrian," he said softly, kneeling beside her. "What's wrong?" She looked up, her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she reached out, took his hand, and placed it gently on her stomach. He felt the faintest vibration beneath her skin, like the flutter of distant wings. Then she whispered, "There's another heartbeat inside me." For a moment, Ethan didn't breathe. His mind rejected it. Humans and Veltherans couldn't reproduce. Their DNA wasn't even remotely compatible. But he had seen too many impossible things already to deny this one. He knelt there silently, eyes glistening in the blue light. Finally, he said, "Then that means?" "We created life, Lyrian." Tears slid down her cheeks as she shook her head. "No, it means the council will come for me. My mother will use this child as proof of power. They'll cut me open to learn how it happened." Ethan gripped her shoulders. "We won't let them. We'll run if we have to." She stared at him in shock. "Run? There's nowhere to run from Veltharan fleets. They'll chase us across the stars." But Ethan's voice was steady. "Then we make sure they never find us." Something in his determination made her believe him, even though her mind screamed that it was hopeless. That night, while the crew slept, Ethan accessed the navigation system. He rerouted the coordinates toward a mining moon hidden beyond the nebula's veil, a place marked uninhabited on all charts. He disabled the tracking beacon and locked the controls with a code only he could open. When the ship finally slipped into the shimmering cloud of the nebula, its signal vanished completely. They were ghosts now, lost to both human and Veltharan eyes. Days turned into weeks. Ethan built a shelter on the moon's surface using the ship's spare modules. The air was thin but breathable, the light soft and golden through the mist. Lyrian's body changed rapidly, her skin glowing more each day as the child grew. Sometimes, when she slept, faint waves of blue light pulsed across the sky, as if the unborn child's energy reached into the world around them. Ethan would sit beside her, watching in silence, wondering if they had created something greater than either species could understand. But peace never lasted long. One evening, while Ethan was repairing an antenna outside, his communicator crackled with static. A faint signal, distorted but unmistakable, came through Soralia's voice. "Ethan Cole, surrender my daughter and the creature she carries. Do this, and you will live." Ethan froze, the tools slipping from his hands. She had found them. He ran back to the shelter, bursting through the door. "Lyrian, they're here." Before she could answer, the ground trembled as the shadow of a massive cruiser darkened the sky. Searchlights cut through the mist, beams of white sweeping across the rocks. Lyrian pressed a hand to her stomach protectively, her eyes glowing in fear. "They'll take me," she whispered. Ethan grabbed the plasma rifle from the wall. "They'll have to go through me first." The door exploded inward as armored soldiers stormed inside, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Ethan fired first, the blast echoing across the valley. Lyrian screamed as energy bolts tore through the walls, scattering shards of crystal dust into the air. She reached for Ethan, but before he could reach her, a stun wave hit him square in the chest. He fell to the ground, gasping, his vision fading. The last thing he saw was Lyrian's terrified face as the soldiers surrounded her, her body glowing brighter and brighter. Then a voice spoke through the comms-cold. Familiar, merciless. "Bring her to me." Hours later, Ethan awoke in darkness, his body aching. The shelter was gone. Smoke rising from the ruins, the cruiser already vanished into the mist. He stumbled to his feet, whispering her name, "Lyrian." There was no answer, only the fading echo of engines in the distance. He looked up at the sky, fists clenched. He didn't know where they had taken her, but he swore he would find her, no matter what world he had to burn to do it. Far above, on the Veltharan flagship, Lyrian lay restrained on a med table, bright lights shining down. Her mother stood beside her, silent, staring at the faint light glowing under her daughter's skin. One of the scientists whispered, "Matron, the child is alive, and its energy levels are beyond measurement." Soralia's expression didn't change, but her voice cracked when she spoke. "Then we have done the impossible." Lyrian looked up at her mother through tears, her voice a broken whisper. "You didn't do this, Mother." Love did. Seralia turned away, unable to meet her daughter's eyes. Because deep inside, she feared that Lyrian was right. The mining moon lay quiet beneath its golden mist. The shelter reduced to ashes and twisted metal. Ethan stood in the wreckage, his face covered in soot and blood. Eyes burning with fury and loss, he could still hear her voice in his head. The echo of her last cry as the Veltheran soldiers dragged her away. For hours he searched through the debris, hoping for something, any sign she might have left behind. Finally, he found it, half buried under a piece of shattered equipment. A small crystal sphere pulsing with faint blue light. When he touched it, Lyrian's voice whispered softly from within. "If you're hearing this, it means they've taken me. Don't come after me, Ethan. They'll kill you." But even as her recorded words pleaded for his safety, he could hear the tremor of fear and love underneath. He clenched his fist around the crystal. "I'm not leaving you to them," he said, his voice low and cold. He spent the next 3 days scavenging what little technology remained. He patched together a small atmospheric glider. Converted from mining drones and half-burned components, sleep was rare, food forgotten. His only thought was getting to Velthera, the heart of the Empire. The place no human had ever dared set foot without permission. He replayed her message over and over, memorizing the background sounds, the pattern of echoes, the rhythm of air pressure. From those details, he triangulated the location her mother's capital ship, the Virelian, orbiting the inner ring of the homeworld. The glider roared to life on the 6th night. Blue fire trailing from its makeshift engines, Ethan climbed into the pilot's seat, the sky above glowing with threads of nebula light. He looked one last time at the ruins of their hidden home. "This was our place," he whispered. "They took it. Now I'll take everything from them." Then he launched into the void, disappearing into the stars. On the Virelian, Lyrian was awake again, bound by silver restraints that shimmered with energy. The med lab around her buzzed with machines as scientists monitored every flicker of her vital signs. Her mother watched from behind a glass wall, her expression unreadable. "Your body is stabilizing," one of the scientists reported. "The hybrid's development is advancing at a rate beyond prediction." Seralia nodded slowly, but her hands were trembling behind her back. When the scientists left, she entered the room alone. Standing beside her daughter's bed, "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. Lyrian turned her head weakly, her voice strained. "You would have destroyed it." Seralia's lips tightened. "You think I would kill my own grandchild?" "You would, if you thought it was born of impurity," Lyrian said quietly. "That's all you've ever cared about, the purity of your name. Not the life it crushed, for a moment." Seralia said nothing. Then she reached out, touching her daughter's glowing wrist, feeling the warmth beneath. "It's alive," she murmured, half in awe, half in fear. "It's perfect." Lyrian looked away, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It's not a tool for you to use, Mother. It's mine. Ours." But before her mother could respond, alarms blared across the ship, red lights flashing through the halls. "Unidentified craft approaching, unauthorized signal detected," the ship's AI announced. Seralia straightened. "What kind of craft?" The officer's voice came through the comm. "Small glider, primitive design, but it's fast. Approaching Vector 92 Mark IV." Seralia's eyes widened. No human could fly through that radiation belt. Lyrian's pulse quickened, her heart leaping in her chest. "Ethan," she whispered. Her mother stared at her in disbelief. "He's coming for you." "Through the inner ring?" Lyrian smiled faintly. "He doesn't know how to give up. Outside." Ethan's glider burst through the clouds of plasma and debris. Alarms screaming in his cockpit, radiation readings spiked. Metal panels melted under the strain, but he pushed forward, teeth clenched. eyes locked on the massive silhouette of the Varelian ahead. He fired the boosters once more, launching himself toward the ship's docking bay. "Computer, override identification," he barked. The small craft's AI hesitated, then responded. Unauthorized command accepted. The glider slammed into the docking shield at near suicidal speed, piercing the barrier before crashing inside. Veltharan soldiers surrounded the wreckage instantly. Weapons drawn, Ethan crawled from the shattered cockpit, coughing, bruised but alive. He raised his hands slowly, pretending to surrender. As the nearest soldier stepped closer, Ethan triggered a pulse grenade hidden on his wrist. Blue light exploded through the bay, knocking the guards to the ground. He grabbed one of their rifles and sprinted down the corridor, guided by the faint hum of the same energy that had bound him to Lyrian. He could feel her presence somewhere deep within the ship, her heartbeat whispering to him through the air. Back in the med lab, Lyrian gasped, the glow under her skin brightening suddenly. She could feel him too. "He's here," she said softly. Seralia looked at her in disbelief. "You can sense him?" Before Lyrian could reply, the wall erupted in a burst of sparks. Ethan stormed through the smoke, weapon raised, his eyes blazing with determination. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he dropped the rifle and rushed to her side. Tearing at the restraints with his bare hands, the metal burned his palms. But he didn't stop. When her hands were free, she reached for him, and the instant their skin touched, the light returned stronger than ever. The entire room shook, consoles short-circuiting, walls humming with raw energy. Seralia shielded her eyes from the blinding glow, shouting, "Stop it! You'll destroy the ship." But neither Ethan nor Lyrian heard her. Their bond pulsed like thunder, blue veins of light spreading across the entire vessel. Every power system overloaded at once. Every circuit screamed. And then, just as suddenly, silence fell. The lights dimmed to a calm azure hue, and everything around them began to float weightlessly. Seralia stared in awe, as gravity itself seemed to bow before them. Her voice broke as she whispered, "The prophecy. The bound spark, it's real." Ethan turned to her, breathing hard. "This ends now, you won't hurt her." Or the child. Seralia's expression softened for the first time, tears gathering in her eyes. "I don't want to hurt her," she said quietly. "I just don't understand what she's become." Lyrian stood weakly, leaning on Ethan, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "I haven't become anything, Mother," she said softly. "I've only become what love allowed me to be, outside." The Varelian floated motionless in orbit, its systems frozen in that single moment of perfect silence. Inside its heart, a new force had awakened something alive, something neither human nor Veltharan could control. The Varelian floated silently above Velthara, its engines dead, its systems frozen in an unnatural calm. Outside, the twin suns burned over the marble clouds, their light reflecting across the ship's silver hull like fire on water. Inside, the corridors were quiet. The soldiers who had survived the pulse lay unconscious, bathed in the faint blue glow that pulsed from the central chamber. And in that chamber stood three figures Lyrian, Ethan and Seralia, bound by a silence heavier than gravity itself. Lyrian's body still glowed faintly, her hand resting over her stomach, where the faint heartbeat of her unborn child thrummed with steady power. Ethan stood beside her, his face marked with soot and cuts, his eyes never leaving her mother's. Across the room, Seralia looked smaller than she ever had before. The proud high matron, the ruler of 1,000 colonies, was trembling, her composure cracking like glass. She looked at her daughter, the daughter she had called barren, cursed, broken, and saw instead something radiant and alive. Her voice came out hoarse. "What have you done, Lyrian?" Lyrian met her gaze without fear. "I did nothing, Mother. Life found its way. That's all it ever wanted to do. Seralia shook her head slowly. You've changed the natural order. You've merged two species that were never meant to join. Ethan stepped forward. Maybe that's the point. Maybe this child isn't a mistake, it's evolution. Seralia's eyes flicked toward him, filled with both hatred and awe. You? You did this, she whispered. A human corrupted the pure blood of Velthera. Ethan's jaw tightened. No, I loved her, he said. That's all. His words hung in the air like a blade. Seralia wanted to strike him, to deny the truth. But the trembling of her own hands betrayed her. Suddenly, the ship's sensors crackled back to life. The AI's voice was distorted, but clear. Warning, multiple vessels approaching. Identification. Veltheron High Council Fleet. Lyrian's head snapped up. The Council? Seralia turned toward the viewing window, her face pale. They must have tracked the energy surge. Dozens of ships appeared in the distance, their silver bodies forming a vast crescent of light. Weapons charging, Ethan moved instinctively, placing himself in front of Lyrian. They'll destroy us, won't they? Seralia nodded slowly. They think this ship carries a threat to our race. They won't risk letting you live. For the first time, Seralia saw fear in her daughter's eyes, not for herself, but for the child. It pierced her like a blade of guilt, twisting deep inside. She realized then what she had done. Her pride had led to this. Her obsession with purity had brought her daughter to the edge of death. Her voice broke. Lyrian, I only wanted to protect our people, to keep our blood strong. Lyrian looked at her sadly. You protected blood, but not life. Mother. Seralia turned away, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know how to fix this, Ethan said quietly. You can start by helping us survive. Outside? The Council fleet transmitted its command. High Matron Seralia, surrender the human and the hybrid, or we will open fire. Seralia stared at the message for a long moment. Then something inside her snapped, an old wound finally tearing open. Her voice trembled, but her tone was clear. Prepare to transmit to the fleet, the communications officer, still recovering from the earlier blast, hesitated. Matron, they'll execute you if you disobey. I said prepare it, she repeated, her voice sharp again. Then she turned to her daughter, her expression softer. You once said love was stronger than control. Prove it now. Lyrian looked confused. What are you doing? Seralia smiled faintly, the first true smile her daughter had ever seen. Something I should have done a long time ago. The channel opened, and her voice filled the void between ships, echoing through the coms of every vessel in orbit. This is High Matron Seralia of Velthera, she began, her voice calm but firm. I stand before you with my daughter, whom you called barren, whom you cast aside. She carries life, a child that is both human and Veltheran. Proof that our bloodlines are not dying, but evolving. A ripple of silence followed her words. The Council's commander replied coldly, You defy the sacred order, Matron. The union is forbidden. Seralia raised her chin. Then let your sacred order perish. I will not hand over my daughter or her child. A moment later, the first blast hit the Virelian. The ship trembled violently, alarms screaming, walls cracking as the impact tore through the lower decks. Ethan grabbed Lyrian and pulled her toward the emergency corridor. Seralia stumbled but followed them, shouting orders to the remaining crew. Divert power to shields. Protect the medbay at all costs. Explosions rocked the halls as they ran. Blue sparks lighting their path, the child inside Lyrian's womb began to glow brighter. Reacting to the chaos around them, each pulse of light repaired the damage in the walls, sealing holes, stabilizing the failing systems. Ethan looked in awe. She's doing it, he whispered. The baby. It's protecting us. Seralia's eyes widened. No, it's protecting life, she said softly. But before she could say more, another explosion hurled them to the ground. Smoke filled the air, and Ethan's voice rang out through the noise. "Lyrian, are you all right?" She coughed, her hands glowing faintly as she reached for him. "I'm fine." He pulled her close, shielding her with his body as debris fell around them. In that moment, Seralia saw something she had never understood before, the strength that comes not from control, but from sacrifice, from love. They reached the central chamber again, flames flickering along the walls. Lyrian could barely stand, her glow flickering. Seralia stepped forward, taking her daughter's hands in hers. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I thought power meant never bending. But true power is knowing when to kneel." Lyrian looked at her in shock. Seralia smiled through tears. "Go, take an escape pod." "Save your child," Ethan protested. "You're coming with us." But Seralia shook her head. "Someone has to stay and make sure the council listens if I die. Let them see my death as a confession." The deck beneath them shook violently, a final explosion tearing through the engine core. Seralia pushed them both toward the escape hatch, her voice breaking, "Go now." Before it's too late, Lyrian's tears glowed as she cried out, "Mother." Seralia looked back one last time, her face illuminated by the burning light. "Live, my daughter. Live for what I never understood." As the escape pod launched into the storm of fire, Ethan held Lyrian close. She buried her face against his chest, feeling the world she knew collapse behind them. Through the viewport, they watched as the Varelian burned in the sky like a dying star. Seralia's final transmission echoed faintly through the static. "Velthera must learn to love before it dies." The pod drifted into the endless dark, carrying with it a human, an alien, and the unborn spark of a new world. Lyrian whispered weakly, her eyes glowing with tears and light. "She finally saw me." Ethan held her tighter, his voice a promise, "and the whole universe will too." The escape pod drifted through the black sea of stars, its metal shell cracked and scorched from the firestorm that had consumed the Varelian. Inside, the air was thick with silence, broken only by the faint hum of the failing engines and the soft, rhythmic sound of two heartbeats, one strong, one small. Ethan sat beside Lyrian, holding her trembling hand, his other arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. Outside, the burning debris of the Veltheron flagship fell toward the planet below like meteors, bright trails of light marking the death of an empire. Lyrian's breathing was shallow, her face pale but glowing faintly. The same blue aura that once frightened her now soft and warm. "She's coming," she whispered weakly. "The baby?" "She's coming." Ethan froze, panic and awe crashing over him at once. "Here? Now?" Lyrian nodded, her hand gripping his tightly. "There's no time, Ethan. She's ready." He looked around the cramped pod, realizing there was nothing, no med unit, no supplies, only fading lights and their will to survive. "Hold on," he whispered, brushing the sweat from her brow. "You're not alone. I'm right here, outside." The pod drifted through the upper layers of Velthera's atmosphere, friction igniting the metal in a storm of fire. Through the viewport, Ethan could see the twin suns rising beyond the clouds. It was dawn on Velthera, and for the first time, it felt like something sacred was about to begin. Inside, Lyrian cried out, her body shaking as waves of energy pulsed through her. Her glow spread across the cabin, the light flickering against the walls like living flame. Ethan held her close, his voice breaking as he whispered, "You can do this, Lyrian. You're the strongest person I've ever known." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her eyes were bright, full of courage. The pod systems flickered, the AI's damaged voice struggling to function, vital signs unstable. Warning, energy output exceeding safety limits. Ethan ignored it, focusing only on her face, on the miracle unfolding in front of him. Minutes felt like hours, and then, in a burst of brilliant light, the pod was filled with silence, again followed by the tiniest sound. A soft, delicate cry. Ethan looked down, his breath catching in his throat. In Lyrian's arms was a small child, her skin a pale silver blue, her eyes glowing faintly with the same light that had bound them together since the beginning. The child blinked, her gaze calm and ancient, as if she already understood the universe she had just entered. Lyrian laughed softly through her tears. "She's beautiful," she whispered, her voice trembling. "She's ours," Ethan smiled, the exhaustion on his face replaced by wonder. "Welcome to the world, little one." But their peace didn't last long outside. The Council's remaining ships were descending. Scanning the surface for survivors, Lyrian's expression darkened. "They'll come for her." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Then they'll have to go through us." The pod scanners beeped weakly, showing a small valley below, lush, green, untouched by cities or war. He guided the pod toward it, forcing the failing thrusters to life. The descent was rough. Metal screaming as they cut through the atmosphere, the pod slammed into the soft earth, rolling until it came to rest in a field of glowing flowers. Ethan stumbled out first, smoke curling from the wreck, his lungs burning from the impact. He turned back quickly, helping Lyrian step out. Cradling the newborn close to her chest, the baby's glow illuminated the mist around them, painting the valley in waves of blue light above them. The Council's fleet hovered in the sky like predators waiting to strike. "Ethan," Lyrian said softly, "they won't stop." He looked at her, then at the child, then back at the sky. His mind racing. Suddenly, the air shimmered. The same strange pulse of energy that once shook the Varelian began to build again. Lyrian gasped as the child's glow intensified, her tiny hand reaching toward the heavens. A blinding wave of light erupted from her body. Spreading outward like ripples through water, the energy struck the Council ships. But instead of destroying them, it disarmed them. Engines powered down, weapons failed, and every screen aboard the fleet went white across every ship. Every soldier felt a strange calm wash over them, a warmth in their chest, a presence that whispered not in words but in feeling. Saralia's voice echoed faintly through the Cum's memory left inside the Council system. Velthra must learn to love before it dies, and in that moment, even the most hardened commander lowered his weapon. Back in the valley, Lyrian stood beneath the fading light, her body weak but her spirit unbroken. Ethan held her as she leaned against him, both staring up at the sky that was no longer filled with war. The air was peaceful now, the ships above slowly retreating. The child's glow dimmed, and she yawned softly before closing her eyes, sleeping peacefully against her mother's heart. Ethan smiled, whispering, "She saved them, didn't she?" Lyrian nodded slowly, not with power, but with what they forgot to believe in. He looked at her, his voice soft. "Love?" She smiled weakly. "Yes, love. The only thing strong enough to change the stars." Days passed. The Council withdrew their forces. Rumors spreading across the galaxy about the hybrid child who silenced entire fleets with light. Veltharan scientists could not explain it. Priests called it divine. Humans called it evolution. But Lyrian and Ethan called it their daughter. They built a small home in that quiet valley, surrounded by silver trees and crystal rivers. At night, the child would play in the fields, her laughter echoing like music under the twin moons. Her glow never faded. It became the light of their new beginning. And one evening, as Lyrian stood beside Ethan watching the stars, she whispered, "Do you think our people will ever understand what she means?" Ethan smiled, wrapping his arm around her. "One day they will, when they stop seeing the difference between alien and human." and start seeing the life they share. Far above them, two worlds began to change slowly. Quietly, beautifully, trade ships replaced war fleets. Words replaced weapons, and legends began to spread across the stars about the infertile alien girl who became the mother of a new era, and the human who loved her enough to rewrite destiny. As dawn rose over the valley once more, the child opened her eyes and reached toward the sky. Her small voice murmured something neither of them could understand. But in that moment, both Ethan and Lyrian felt the same thing, a promise that the future she carried was brighter than any sun. And so began a new chapter for both worlds, a dawn born not of conquest, but of compassion, a dawn written by love. End of story. Her mom forced infertile alien girl to marry a human, but when she saw her daughter pregnant, HFY sci-fi story.